This is Awais. I'm back with the second part of our Blender tutorial. So in this video I'm going to talk about 4 topics. I'm going to talk about navigating in 3D space, 3D view window, configuring user interface, and creating custom layouts. Just want to let you guys know that if you have any question, you can tweet me to the Twitter at Awais Mirza01, and if there's any question you can drop a comment below, and let's get started. First thing we're going to look at is 3D window, right? So this is our 3D window right now where you can see that user perspective view. On the left you got this tool panel. So in this panel I've got few menus here such as create, relation, animation, physics. So I'm going to go back to tools now. The first option we got here is transform. So the transform, these are the few commands in the transform. So I've got translate, rotate, scale, mirror. If you hover over your cursor to scale, you can see that the shortcut key is S. Next we got edit menu. So in the edit menu you can duplicate the object, delete, join. We talk about it in the later videos. So for now this is your very important 3D view panel. So you got few commands here. On the right we've got our 3D window, which is basically the main part of your Blender project. So this is where you're gonna work. You're gonna create your models, animation, rendering, everything will happen here. Down here I've got this view menu, select menu, add object. So let's look at the view menu first. Click on the view menu. So here you got few commands such as toggle full screen area. So if I click here, Alt F10 is a shortcut key for that. So this is now is full screen, so you can see the 3D view in your full screen and you can start working if you know about shortcut keys. So I'm gonna go back by pressing Alt F10, then click here again, and next we got toggle quad view. So I'm gonna click here. The shortcut key for that is Control Alt Q. And now as you can see that I've got 4 windows here. These 3 windows are basically orthographic view. So this is our top view, that's our front, and that's our right, and this is our perspective view. To go back, just go back and then click toggle quad view, and then you will go back to your perspective view. Go back to view menu now. So here we got view all. So as you can see that we got shortcut keys for every single command. So it's very important that if you can remember all those shortcut keys. Well, the difference between these left and right, these are still perspective views. These are not orthographic views. So if you want to go to orthographic view, you need to turn on view perspective or orthographic. So the shortcut key for that is num5. So as you can see that if I press num5, you see the difference. That's the orthographic view, that's the perspective view. So in perspective view I can just make it perspective. Just press your mouse wheel and then you can just orbit around. The next option we got select, so which basically lets us select the object. So if I've got this cube there, right, click here. So if you got your select pattern, select more or less these commands, so we'll talk about it in the later videos. Let's go to the add menu now. In add menu we've got mesh objects such as plane, cube, circle, UV sphere, ICO sphere, text objects, curved surface. So all these are basically objects. Let's go to our object now. So this is really important as well. A lot of options you will find here, such as right now we got object mode, right? So in object mode, go to object. So you got your undo, redo, you can transform the object. So you got your rotate, scale, a lot of options are here. So this menu I'm going to use a lot during the projects and during the teaching, so this is very important. The next one we're going to look at object mode. So if you click here, you got few modes here. So object mode is basically to create an object and do some basic editing, but the most of the editing we'll be doing in edit mode. So if I click here, as you can see that our transform menu has been changed, our properties menu has been changed, and the view cube is changed as well. So let's go back to object mode now, and then next we got some shading options. So let's say I'm just gonna zoom in. To zoom in, just use your mouse wheel and just scroll up to zoom in. All right, so now basically I'm looking at as textures. All right, so I don't have any texture onto this cube right now, that's why it's showing me like that. So I'm gonna go back and then change to bounding box. So as you can see that we can only see the lines of the box. So that's very important if you want to do quick rendering. In this viewport is very useful. And then next we got wireframe. All right, and then we got solid. That's a solid basically. And then we got texture material rendered. Rendered is a new shading viewport which came into Blender 2.77. It wasn't available in 2.6, so this is kind of new. Next we got some pivot points, we'll talk about it later. And then we got our gizmo. We got our gizmo transform manipulation, such as, let's say, if I click here, turn it on, and then I've got this gizmo there, right? So this is right now on move gizmo, right? So I click here, I can click on this red, and then I can move it on x-axis. If I want to move it towards y-axis, on the left you can see the values been changing as well. So if I click here to the y-axis and I leave here, and now these values been changed. So I'm going to bring them back by typing 0, 0, 0. Alright, so next we got the rotate. So if you want to rotate any object, you can do that by clicking here, and now that your gizmo has been changed to rotate. Well, just want to mention one thing here. Hold on your shift key and then use your mouse wheel to just pan around into your perspective view. So if you click here now, let's say I'm gonna go and select that, and I'm gonna select this, and then you can see that I can rotate it on x-axis or its y-axis, and I go back and then select the red one, and I can rotate that as well. Next we got scaling options. So I'm just gonna bring it back by pressing Ctrl Z. Alright, next we got scaling option. I'm gonna select scale. If you wanna scale it to x-axis, click on the red, and then you can scale it. You got green to scale it. You got z-axis to scale it. Alright, so next option we got some transform orientation. So I'll talk about it later. Alright. Next we got some snapping option. If anyone of you watching this tutorial familiar with 3D Studio Max or AutoCAD or Revit, you know what is it. So it's just let you snap to the object. So if I go to my create, and then I will just create another, let's say, cube, and then I want to snap it to that one, so I can just drag this and then turn on the snapping option, and then make sure that I'm snapping to vertices. I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna change that to move. Alright, so this is a vertex, so I can just snap it. You see that round circle? That's let you snap. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna try to snap that. Alright, so now we're gonna look at navigating in 3D space. I've got a mouse with the mouse wheel. If I slide my mouse wheel up, I can zoom in. If I slide my mouse wheel down, I can zoom out. If I press my mouse wheel, I can orbit around in 3D space. If you add a shift key and press your mouse wheel and then move, you can pan around to your 3D view. If you add your control key with the mouse wheel, you can zoom in and zoom out. So let's look at it one more time. Press your mouse wheel to orbit. Hold on your shift key with mouse wheel button, pan around. Hold on your control key with mouse wheel. You can zoom in and zoom out. So let's say I want to zoom into this cylinder, right? So I can just orbit it first and then hold my control key and then zoom in and then hold my shift key with mouse wheel and I can pan around. Alright, let's look at one more command here. Let's say I will just orbit and I'll hold on my shift key to pan and I zoom in, alright? And now if I want to look at the whole 3D view, there's a command in the view tab. If you click here, you go to your align view, and here you got few commands here. Alright, so I want to click on center cursor and view all. The shortcut key for that is Shift C. So if I click that, I will be able to zoom out to the extent. Okay, so this is basically zoom extent. So let's look at it one more time. I want to zoom in. Okay, and then if you go to let me try the shortcut key. So Shift C lets you zoom extent. I'm going to show you another command. Let's say, let me create another circle or cube here. Okay, so I'm going to click here and I'm going to click another cube there, right? So let's say you've got a lot of objects in your 3D view. So what you can do, you can zoom into an object as well. So I'm going to go to my outliner and then I'm going to select this cube, or maybe let's say cube number 3, right? And then I go to my view tab and then click on align view, and then there's a command called view selected. Alright, I'm gonna click on it, and now it's basically zooming into that object. And you can type Shift C to zoom out. Now let's look at some more view commands. I'm gonna go to my view tab now, and here I've got left, right, back, front, bottom, top, and camera views. So I can use these shortcut commands as well. Let's say I want to get to the camera view. First, let me orbit that, and I press 0 on a numpad. It's going to give me that camera view. Alright, to go to the left, you can press Control num1. Let me check the shortcut command one more time. So the left is Control num3. So Control num3, that's the left view now. And let's go back to num3. Num3 basically lets you view to the right, and num1 front, num7 top, and 0 is the camera view. Alright, so let's try them. I'm gonna press 1, that's my front view. 3 is my right view. 7, that's my top view. Alright, and then I've got 2, 8. Well, let's have a look here. If I go to my view tab now in my 3D view, and let's go to navigation. So this is very useful as well if you don't have mouse with the wheel, so you can use these commands. So to orbit left, num4, num6 for orbit right, orbit up is 8, 2 is down, and num9 to orbit opposite, which is really cool. Let's try them now. I'm gonna go and orbit up. So I'm gonna press num8. As you can see, that it's basically orbiting on basically x-axis. Alright, and then if let me go back and get the front view. Okay, so if I want to orbit to z-axis, I can press 4. That's basically orbiting, and you can keep pressing. One time press, it's gonna orbit a little bit, and then press one more time, press one more time. 6 will orbit to the right, 2 orbit to the down, 8 to the left. Okay, and this is going to give us opposite orbit, 9. So as you can see that you can go to opposite view, which is really cool. Well, if you get used to with these keys, these are very helpful, but I would still prefer to get a mouse with the wheel. Nowadays every mouse comes with a wheel, so just letting you guys know. Alright, let's go back to our navigation again. Roll left, Shift num4, roll right, Shift num6. Let's try that now. Shift 4, that's basically rolling. Alright, and then let's try our pan command. So control key, add the control key to 4, then you can pan around. Alright, zoom in, plus sign and minus sign on the numpad. Alright, so I'm gonna try control key, and I can pan around, up, down to zoom in, plus sign, minus sign to zoom out. Let's look at a few more commands. Navigation, fly navigation, walk navigation. So the walk navigation is like your mouse is free now. I'm not pressing any button. It's still letting me pan around. It's called walking. To get out of the command, I just click and then get out of it. Alright. Align view got a few more options as well. View selected, center view to cursor, which is that. So wherever my cursor is, let's say this is my cursor, right? And I go and select navigation, align view, and then click on center view to cursor. It's gonna center that cursor into the view. Alright, so we got navigation covered now. Walking is something like same thing with the fly. And then I'm gonna click on this object, or you can select it from outliner, and I'm gonna go and select align, and then view selected, and then Shift C to zoom extend. Let's look at a few more commands here. So I've got my toggle quad view. I've explained that before. You can duplicate that area to a new window. Playback animation, this is about animation, we talked about it. That's just it's gonna take you to zoom all, okay? And then show all layers. These are like all layers, right, in outliner, so it's gonna give you all layers. So now we're gonna look at some user preference. So you can access user preference by clicking any of this icon and go to user preference. It will change our 3D view to user preference, which is not a good way to access user preference. So I'm gonna go back and change this to 3D view, and you can change any of the panel to user preference. But I want to access user preference by going to my file menu and then click on user preference. It's going to give us this dialog box, right? So I'm going to go to my interface. You got interface, editing tab, input, add-on, theme, file. We go through step by step. Okay, so in interface you got some display options, such as you want to show tooltip, or you don't want to hide, or you want to hide it. So you want to show playback FPS, or you want to show them. Alright, so if you got object origin size, so you can change that as well. So I've got this object origin size, right? So if I increase that, as you can see that this little ball, a circle, it's increasing. So I'll keep that as a default, which was display mini exercise. So we have this here, right? So I'm gonna increase that. As you can see that it's increasing. Change that to default for now, which was I think 32. You can increase the brightness, and then you got view manipulation. So these are the few options here. Auto perspective, you want to keep your auto perspective smooth, or you want to change that. Okay, so these are the few settings here. Few settings here related to animation we will talk about in a later when we need them. Let's go to the editing tab now. In the editing tab, you've got few settings about keyframing, visual keyframing. So we'll talk about it in the later videos as well. There's nothing we can do right now. So input tab, we go to input now. Here you got a preset, right? If any one of you watching this tutorial may be familiar with 3D Max or Maya. So as you know that 3D software select the object by clicking left mouse button, but Blender does it with right. So you can change that here. You want to select with left, or you want to select right. I'll keep that right because I'm doing this specific Blender tutorials. So if you want to use Maya or 3D Max, you can use that. So all the hotkeys will change that to 2D Max hotkeys, and you will have the access the way you access or select object and orbit objects. I want to keep that Blender by default. You can make your own preset by clicking on this plus icon. I don't want to make that right now. And then you got your drag threshold, tweak threshold. You want to double click speed is available here. Orbit style, you want to keep that as a trackball, or you want to change that turntable. I'll keep that as a default. Next we got hotkeys here. So if you want to change any of the shortcut keys, then you can change it here. Let's say I go to Windows, so you want to make a duplicate window. The keyboard shortcut for that is Control Alt W. So you can change them here. I want to change that to default. Control Z, or you can click on restore. So these are all the hotkeys available here. Next we got add-ons related to adding plugins to Blender. So when we talk about some animation or plugins, I will explain these. Let's go to theme. Theme is basically you can change the interface as well. Let's say I'll go to my user interface, and let's say I want to change color outline, right? So I'll increase that and I'll change the color. Okay, and let's say I change the color of this. As you can see that the layer color has been changed here. Radio buttons, you can change the color of that as well. As you can see that the color has been changing. So this is basically, you can go to every. Let's go to file. These are the default directories where you save your files, such as your font, textures, render output. If you have a lot of textures in JPG or PNG file, you can just specify that folder here, and Blender will automatically detect them, and you can find them in a material library. Render output is there, default path, and then you got temporary saves available there, so you can change them as well. Let's go to system, the most important part of our user preference. Okay, so here a lot of people will find that Blender interface is pretty small for their resolution, so you can increase or decrease. As it was 72 I guess by default, so I increased that by 95. So my resolution is pretty high on my monitor, so that's why I needed to make it bigger to look at it. Here the main part of I want to show you is here. By default, computer device, it will select it to none, and then if I click here, I can only use CPU to process my objects, and I can use only CPU to use this software. So if you click on CUDA, and then you get to choose your graphic cards, which is going to improve our performance of this software. So make sure that I select that. You guys go and check it out. If you have any good graphics card, make sure you select that to improve the performance of the software. Alright, so let's close this. But before you close that, you gotta make sure that you click on Save User Preference. I'm gonna go back to theme and then reset my theme to default by clicking here. And then I will save user settings, go to here and then go save user setting. Click close. If you have changed your user preference and you didn't like it, right? So remember, you can always go back to default. If you go to your file menu and click on load factory setting, it will reset your software and load the factory setting, which is like a default and when you started your program for the first time. Finish my tutorial, I want to show you the last thing, how to create your own layouts. So if you click here on the info panel, got 3D view, full animation, composition, game logic, and we got two here, default 002, 003, right? That's what I made. So to make your own layout, click on this plus icon and then you got default 001. So this is the view right now we have. Any changes I make here, let's say I'll get rid of this, and if you hold on your shift key and then when you see that plus sign and then click and drag, and you can make any window or any panel a floating panel. This is very useful when you got multiple monitors set up, so you want the whole 3D view at one screen, and you can make your floating panels and just drop them to the other monitor and you can use them from there whenever you need them, which is really good. So I'm gonna click on close to get rid of that. There's another thing I want to show you here. Press Control key. If you click here and drag, you can make another view. So I've got two perspective view right now. These are two separate perspective view. This was my second tutorial of Blender. So if you like this video, give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any question, tweet me at Twitter at Awais Mirza01, and you can drop a comment below as well. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys in the next tutorial.